Jake flies into an empty ballroom, and everyone demorphs as quickly as possible, David shitting his pants several times over. Much like the Animorphs trying to demorph wolves back in number 3 The Encounter, they have a hard time doing it, being this close to the deadline, and Marco nearly gets stuck as a human-sized flea before now human and unexploded Cassie manages to talk him through it. So they're in the ballroom. And oh yeah, there appears to be a small portable Yerk pool in one of the corners, where a pillar should be in fact. Axe quickly determines that the small pool is being hid by a hologram, which the Animorphs are currently standing in, which is why they can't see it. David is quick on the ball here in figuring out that it also uses a one-way force field so that the pillar hologram feels solid on the outside. All this is being beamed into the room from orbit through a hole in the ceiling. Before they can really figure anything else out, some people begin to enter the room while Jake is standing outside the hologram, so he dives under one of the dinner tables. One of the people to walk in is the White House Chief of Protocol, who is arguing very aggressively that the world leaders at the conference should walk behind the pillar when they go up to the podium. From his vantage point, Jake realizes that the man has a slashed shoe, and it quickly all comes together. It was the Chief of Protocol who was on Marine 1, because of, reasons. So Visitor 3 must have morphed him in order to take control of the conference setup, so that the world leaders will walk by the Yerk pool and they can grab them and make them into controllers and all that. The people leave and the Animorphs decide to follow suit through the hole in the ceiling. But before that, Axe hesitated. He turned his stock eyes meaningfully toward the stainless steel tub. The Yerks are already in place. Do we leave them? I knew what he was suggesting. It would be easy to finish them off right here and there. But if we did, the Yerks might simply be able to replace them, and they'd be warned that we knew their plan. Besides, there's something wrong about killing defenseless slugs. I was pretty sure of that. This is quite the contrast to Jake in number 6 The Capture, who, when given a similar situation with a batch of helpless Yerks, chose to fry them without hesitation. But back then, the Animorphs thought of the Yerks as all bloodthirsty beings of evil. Things are different now. Anyhow, before they can start flying out of there, they need a distraction to keep the guards busy, so David runs over and pulls the fire alarm, but trips on his way back to the hologram. Jake dashes out to help him while the rest of the Animorphs finish morphing and fly away. Some controllers start to come in to check on the Yerk pool, so David and Jake dive under the tables again. In a panicked state, David begins to morph Lion. I grabbed the lion's mane. About a millisecond later, it occurred to me that this was David's first time in Lion morph, and he might not have control of it. What? This isn't his first time in Lion morph. It was clearly stated that he morphed Lion when you went looking for him the night he broke into the hotel. Some controllers come in to check on the Yerk pool and leave. Before David demorphs, he hits Jake with this. Hey, you ever wonder who'd win in a fight between a lion and a tiger? That took me by surprise. I hesitated. Lion. That's what I think. But it'd probably never happen, David said with a laugh. It's just interesting to think about. I better demorph. The Animorphs escape and Mole details over at Cassie's barn. Among the details discussed is why Visitor 3 would morph the Chief of Protocol personally. Cassie grinned. Typical males, she said airily, self-mocking. All you think about is plot. You always forget it's about personality. It's about character. Visitor 3 has to be there, see? He's an egomaniac. You hear that, people? If you're a woman, no trying to work out the factual details. Only focus on the emotional, probably irrelevant stuff. Cassie says so. The banquet is tonight, and they need to spend a few hours at home to get their affairs in order, including the whole skipping school thing. As they begin to leave, Jake tells Rachel about Sadler's accident. Everyone made the right noises of sympathy. So did David. But while his mouth was making the right words, I saw something disturbing in his eyes, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I glanced at him, and he looked at me with a face that seemed to be shining with restrained excitement. like someone who had just figured out how to win the lottery. That night, the Animorphs go forward with Operation Sahali. The plan? Fly up in bird of prey morphs to where the force field is at its weakest, fly down the force field tube to the hole in the ceiling, drop heavy objects on the heads of any controllers that happen to be inside the hologram, morph the controllers, and reveal the existence of aliens to any of the foreign leaders as they step into the hologram. And it seems to work. They knock out the guards, morph them. We're breaking the rule of morphing sentient beings, but damn it, David, get back in that barn and freeze your ass off. And watch from their side of the hologram as the banquet commences. However, it's never that simple, and when the world leaders approach the podium, they simply walk around without passing through the hologram. Jake quickly realizes that the banquet itself is a hologram, and quickly orders everyone to morph for combat. The banquet hologram turns off and reveals Visor 3 and a small army of Hork-Bajir. By the way, Visor 3 gloated, the real banquet is tomorrow night. What? What? How did that happen? The only possible explanation is that the official intel purposefully lied about the date of the banquet, which is how Eric King got it wrong. But why would they do that when the banquet was supposed to be a complete secret? If it was only a mistake from someone on the bottom of the ladder, and that's who Eric was in contact with, then would the Yeerks, who control people as high as the Chief of Protocol, really catch it, assume the Endlight Bandits would use that exact source of information, and base a trap around it? Are the Yeerks just covering all their bases and setting things up on the off chance that the Endlights might show up a night early? Did they do this same trap the night before to no avail? This makes no sense! And that's when it began to click. The last puzzle piece fell into place. How the heck did he get all these Hork-Bajir in this place? It's almost as if there was a hole in the roof that was protected by force fields and hidden by holograms. David starts to freak out and surrenders to Visor 3, to everyone's disgust. However, Jake has seen through the Visor's ruse. All the Hork-Bajir here are actually holograms. The Animorphs decide to force the attack. David is right by Visor's side with his guard down, and he attacks aggressively, creating some ambiguity as to whether he really surrendered or was seeking an opportunity to get at the Visor. We'll never know for sure. The jig is up, so the hologram goes down, revealing only a handful of human controllers with firearms. There's a struggle, and it ends with a standoff when Axe gets his tail to the Visor's throat. The Visor plays one more card. He figures David is among the group, that the Andalite bandits gave him the morphing power, which sounds totally not Andalite. Axe voted to leave David to the Yeerks, remember? Visor's sweet nothings are cut short when he learns Secret Service is on their way, so he tells David to meet the Yeerks at his old home if he wants to live free with his parents again, and everyone backs off. The Animorphs hiding in the holographic pillar, and the Visor morphing the Chief of Protocol again. Jake privately tells everyone on the flight back home to let David believe that they aren't mad with him about surrendering. With everyone home, Jake sets up the old pillows under the blanket trick to make it look like he's sleeping in case Tom checks on him, and flies back to Cassie's barn, where he sets up watch with Axe and Tobias to see if David takes Visor 3's offer. And in the early morning hours, a golden eagle flies out of the barn. Jake tells Tobias to follow David. He and Axe will morph birds and try to catch up. They reach David's house, but there's no sign of him or Tobias. They spot a UPS truck parked a ways away, clearly belonging to the Yeerks. Jake tells Axe to demorph a few houses down and hop some fences to the backyard, while he flies into a big-ass hole they left from the fight a few days ago. It was a strange scene inside. The battle we'd fought there had destroyed the walls, annihilated furniture, left the place looking like a house that'd been demolished. But someone had dragged the bed back into place. It faced a television set. The set was on, but the picture was dim and snowy. A golden eagle stood on the upright bedpost, watching the TV screen. And that's when I saw the other bird. A crumpled mass of feathers lay atop a wadded-up sheet. Blood had seeped into the material. Yeah, David's officially the bad guy now. David, you can't do this, I said as calmly as I could. Do what, Jake? Turn myself over to the Yeerks? Of course not. You really think I'm dumb enough to try that? That's not what this is about. Then what are you doing? I roared, suddenly not so calm. What are you doing hurting Tobias? Hurting him? Oh, he's dead, in case you were wondering, David said. Definitely dead. My mind kind of went numb as he spoke those words. I strained to hear breathing sounds from the clump of mangled feathers, but there were no sounds. I felt very weak, helpless. How could this be? How could I have let it happen? Why are you doing this? I pleaded. What choice do I have? The Yeerks know me. My parents would turn me in. And you? You and the others? Hey, you made it clear the other night when I checked into the Holiday Inn, right? What was it you said? Something like, if you go around using your powers however you want, we can't have you around? You're a danger to us? I recognized the words. You think I don't know you were threatening me, Jake? David said. I'm not spending the rest of my life taking orders from you. You and Marco and Rachel and Cassie, you like this clique or something. Like, do what we say, or you can't be one of the popular kids. My family used to move around a lot. I was always the new kid in school. I got used to being pushed around by the so-called popular kids. That's all this is. This is like you and Marco and Rachel are the cool kids, and I'm just the new kid, right? So you get to push me around. Rachel gets to call me a coward. Because I want to stay alive? I don't think so. You murdered Tobias because you think this is some stupid school thing? Murder? I don't think so, Jake, he said with a laugh. He's a bird. You may kill a bird, but it isn't murder. I'd never do that. I wouldn't hurt a human. But hey, an animal? That's a different story. Again, Tobias's words come to haunt us. I'm a bird. Birds are not capable of stealing. AKA, when in an animal form, we are no longer human. And you can't murder what isn't human, right? David tells Jake that he has no intention of taking orders from anyone, Yeerk or Animorph, and plans to acquire a person and morph him for 2 hours at a time, take his identity. He even has a person in mind. Jake has enough of this, and he and David bird wrestle into the backyard. This attracts the attention of the Yeerks, and some Hork-Bajir come to claim the two, but that's when Axe leaps over the fence to deliver some sweet Andalite justice. Well, okay, he just scoops up Jake and runs away. Andalite justice. David makes a run for it, and Jake starts to follow, telling Axe to get Rachel. Take note of that, because it's 90% of the next book for some reason. David flies to the mall and lands on the roof and hides. Jake lands, demorphs, and remorphs Tiger. It's time to see who would win in a fight between a lion and a tiger. He leaped. We hit shoulder to shoulder and rolled across the roof. I was on my feet in a flash, but suddenly I realized I wasn't on gravel. My feet were slipping. My claws had nothing to grip. I was standing on glass, the skylight. Below me I saw the dim nightlights of the mall. I caught a strange, unreal glimpse of the Walden Books and the baby gap beside it. It was a 20-foot drop to the upper mall concourse. David leaped. I couldn't grip well enough to move, so I stood, defenseless, as the tan blur came at me like a truck. He hit. His mouth was aimed at my throat. I jerked aside. He slammed into me, and there was a huge, world-filling shattering of glass. Down we fell. Down we fell, slashing and biting and trying to kill, even as the floor rushed up to slam us. And then, in mid-air, twisting to get my feet beneath me, I felt the teeth. I felt them sink into my neck. I felt the blood gushing. The tiger's blood. My blood. Falling. And already the darkness.